I'm ChosenArchitect, and this is All The Mons. Now today is episode 10, and that means it is World Download Day. Every 10 episodes, I publish a world download to the Discord, to the World's Download channel. So if you're a supporter of any tier, whether that is on Patreon, Twitch, here is a YouTube member, or definitely through the Discord, you gain access to a special World Downloads channel on the Discord. And in there, you will find hundreds of world downloads. So thanks for all of you who do choose to support, and I appreciate you very, very much. And well, it's time to get on with today's video. Now, last episode was absolutely epic as I built the Team Rocket Lab, aka in my world, Rocket Labs. And today I plan on getting some more of the interior space done, but also diving deeper into power, especially as we start to move closer and closer to getting into AE2, which is going to need a little bit of power to really get fully into it. Now, also last episode, we caught a shiny Poliwag, and you guys made sure to let me know, Chosen, please evolve this bad boy and choose an interesting evolution, which we kind of get to pick and choose the final evolution of Poliwag. Now, here at Rocket Labs, we only choose the best of the evolutions, only the strongest. And that, of course, is purely based on cosmetics. Yes, I've got to be able to click on this. There we go. And level it all the way up to 25. And once we hit level 25, well, we can now evolve into our first evolution, Poliwag, which I think that these evolutions are pretty nice, and the color change is not super dramatic, especially on the first evolution. But this one is pretty good. Like, I love this color change. This one is a little bit more noticeable. But here is where we've got to make a decision. We can either use a Waterstone or King's Rock. Waterstone will turn it into Poliwrath, which is going to give us a water fighting type. And it turns green with the shiny form. But what we could do is do Politoad, and that evolves into a really cool blue and pink color scheme, which I think is way cooler looking. So you know what? We are going to use King's Rock on this bad boy. And I believe that we just have to have it hold it, and it also has to be traded. But since we're in a single player world, we get to utilize a special item for that. So take this item, there you go, which it's now holding King's Rock. And we need to get ourselves a classic link cable. Oh man, the days of the Game Boy. And I'm assuming that we right click, and by doing that, we can now evolve it. Oh man, and look at this. Politoad is going to evolve. Well, I mean, Poliwhirl is going to evolve into Politoad. This is a pretty cool evolution, though. And there we go. Look how adorable. Why are you so tiny? I was expecting you to be way bigger than that, to be fair. You are absolutely tiny and cute. And pink and blue. It's adorable. And there you go. As requested by the comment section, you got what you wanted. And I gotta admit, it's adorable. And for right now, going right back into the PC where it belongs, because we're not using this just yet, even though this may have some benefits to our party in the future. Who knows? Yes. Back to power and how we're going to generate it. So I'm thinking the Powah mod seems to be like one of the best early game sources of significant power. And that's simply because of its minimal resource investment. There's not going to be a lot needed to keep the power going or keep the power producing. But now I will say, as our progression goes on, more power options are definitely going to show themselves. And there are some really nice ways of generating lots of power in this pack. Now, one of the things I'm really going to need is a lot of blaze rods. That is one thing that the Powah mod does consume quite a bit of. So one way that I could handle this is by immediately shutting off our current blaze spawner, taking these guys out real quick, just like that. And now we have ourselves a redstone controlled spawner by clicking a comparator on there. Now we can just simply power this up by giving it redstone. And so this is going to let me set up a very particular type of trap. So I am going to want to place in some mob fans, and I want to make sure that these guys don't really see us. So we're gonna have a mob fan here and in all of the corners, very similar to our other mob farm. we're going to make sure that this can push out into this direction. And it is enough to push it 1 block, which we do want it to do. And we want these guys to fall down into this pit down here. Once they're down in the pit, we can use something very special down here called entity conveyors. And the entity conveyors should be able to push the mobs into the center. And what is going to be in the center? Well, a mob masher. And something else that I found, for some reason this fan does not like to play nice. So using the entity conveyors here and instead of using fans is going to be the way to go. Now we can modify our mob spawners quite a lot here. Already we've enabled redstone control, but there's several other things we can do, like for example, make the spawn delay go down. So that way more potentially spawn. We can also increase the amount of entities that spawn every spawn cycle. That is with a gas tier. So we probably should set up a way to generate a bit of sugar. That should be quite easy. When definitely removing like the spawn delay or getting it a little bit lower, and we can do that with clocks. To be able to produce quite a bit of sugarcane quickly, we can make SNAD. And SNAD has a really cool functionality if it is pulsed with redstone, which we can set up right here. This will speed up the growth ticks. So we set this to pulse really, really fast. Place our sugarcane down and watch how quickly our sugarcane grows. And then using something like a simple block breaker while holding any particular item, doesn't really matter, will now break this automatically. Then we can, for example, take like a drawer, put a void upgrade in it, and then just use an item collector to collect all of the drops from this area. And that right there is automatic sugarcane that will continue to void. That is if the container overfills, which should reach around 2,000, give or take. Back to our spawner, we can just continue to increase or decrease the spawn delay. So there's that for the sugar, and then we'll just click a bunch of clocks on here to reduce its minimum delay. And now we've got the achievement Time Warped. Yes, where we've lowered the spawner down to 2020. This thing is going to be incredibly fast now. So we'll place this in and let's give this a test. It does have to go through its initial cycle first, but once it makes it through the cycle, we should be able to see how fast this thing is going to spawn. It should be quite fast, honestly. And there it goes. So yes, after it finishes that first cycle, it will enter into this state. Now, it's not spawning right now because these are all existing here, but it should start to go quicker. And it does look some of them are getting stuck in the corners. This is where we do need to get upgrades on this thing. I think what's going to fix our side problem is to limit the area, and then I'm just going to use these to sort of send all of the mobs to the side like this. And then we need to upgrade, so put some sharpness and some looting, and this farm is about to produce a ton of blaze rods. Honestly, probably more blaze rods than I can handle. Yeah, these guys are just going to fall in. Just to put it in perspective, this is us gathering them at the moment. And by the way, this farm right here is only going to run when I'm here. It's not going to constantly run. However, later on, we can make this farm run nonstop. We will just need ourselves another star. Getting back home after that grand adventure, I want to come back in here and check how much coal I have. And yes, we now have plenty of coal that is being generated from our quarry. And this is going to be perfect because now we have the ability to dive into the Powah mod. So we can either use lava, which is good if you have an automated way of refilling lava buckets somehow. But for right now, just using clay balls and also using the coal and blaze powder, this is going to be the way that we are going to get started with this mod. And we are going to need a lot of dielectric paste, mind you. That is one of my biggest gripes about the Powah mod, is just how much crafting has to go on in order for this mod to even become viable. You just simply spend more time crafting than actually like interacting with anything from the mod. But I will say it does have one really cool thing going for it. A really neat crafting mechanic utilizing the energizing orb, and this is how we get started with this mod. Now, in order for the energizing orb to work, we are going to need to send it power, and this unlocks most of the Powah mod, like for example energizing steel and all of these other ingredients that are going to allow us to make bigger and better upgrades for our machines, producing more power. Getting started, I mean, we can get by with like a couple of these, so we'll go ahead and we'll make 2 of these starter rods, and then we should be able to immediately upgrade the starters into basic, which I think is going to be how we get started fully with this mod. And so these guys are now set up at basic, and they can transfer a little bit of power. Now the energizing orb is very interesting in its mechanic. So items can go in, but like a bunch of items can go in, right? But really, we need to limit how many items go in, otherwise this thing will not craft. And I find this to be a pretty fun challenge. You can actually get by and handle everything with just vanilla redstone if you want. Just as an example, if I go ahead and I power a cable, which if you were just using this mod, you would probably use the mod's own cable, but I'm just using mechanism for example, and I'm going to place the energizing rods. These will automatically link up to the energizing orb, by the way. And the range is sort of like a crop. You can sort of think of it as like a crop where it needs to be within a 9x9 space with this in the center. So the max it can go is about 4 blocks out in all directions. Now I really love showing off the vanilla way of doing this because it lets you kind of understand how this whole thing is supposed to function and how limiting actually works. So let me show you how this is supposed to work. So we are going to take one and then put one on here, and then the lasers connect, and then bam, we get the finished product. But what can happen is, let's say we are sending this to automate with hoppers, it just starts to send a bunch in at a time, and this completely borks everything. So what we can do instead is we can detect when there are items inside. For example, when there is an item in here, you can see a comparator signal of 1, and then whenever we put another item in here, we get a power output of 2. And that's exactly what we need to make a really simple hopper locker, where we can send our redstone across here. This is a power of 1, a power of 2, which then will lock this hopper and lock this hopper when this has reached 2, which is perfect. And if we toggle this on, we can go ahead and put our items in here. And then if we put a hopper in the bottom, like so, the items will now flow in. And when I turn this off, the 2 items will go in complete, and this right here is solving that simple problem. But it does get a little bit more complicated, by the way, whenever you need to, for example, only have 1 item in. But this is where I love to use other mods and show off really cool functionality that you may not actually know is possible. And so I present to you SFM, or Super Factory Manager. And so here I get to show you another cool way that you can utilize SFM, because we've already used it for a mob farm. So instead of using hoppers and redstone logic, we can just simply use 2 separate barrels for right now, an input barrel and an output barrel. And then we can have our energizing orb just be right on top of this. Inside, we are going to need to place a programming disk, and this is where we can kind of get started. We'll click the view examples. I usually like to click a simple program and just hit done. And all this has now done is it's just placed in this basic program already formatted in the correct way for us to use. But now here's where the fun and magic happens. Inside of the examples are examples of everything that we're going to need in order to automate this. Everything from limits by using such things as this to slots and sides, for example. Now, the cool part about setting up these programs is you don't really need to know anything about programming. You just need to follow the examples. And the examples explain literally everything. But in this case, I want to pull 2 different things out, and we want to limit. And this is where some cool functionality is going to take place, where we can use this to actually limit what goes inside this energizing orb. Back inside here, we have input from, and I'm going to say barrel 1. And barrel 1 is just simply going to be what I'm using to identify this barrel as a variable inside of the factory manager. And then this one is going to be barrel 2. I can then hold down Control Shift and just simply copy this line, paste it in, move it over, and then I'll call this input orb, like so. Because we're only handling 3 different things here, those are the only variables we're going to have to worry about. Or I guess you can call them labels instead of variables. Make this as clear as possible. Input is just simply pulling from something, and output is sending to something. So to organize our thoughts, we want to input from the barrel, and then we want to send or output to the energizing orb. Then we want to input from the energizing orb and output into this barrel. And that is defined just like so. We have an input that is the barrel, we have the input from the orb, and we have an output from the orb, and then we have an output to the barrel. Now, if we want to limit how much can go into something, we need to make sure we're handling that on the thing that is sending to, for example, the output. And we're going to be doing that to the orb. But we can also set up filtering, and we can filter in some really cool ways where we don't even have to put the full mod ID or item ID. We can just preface a very specific part of it. To be able to hold items, we need to retain, and we'll say retain one because we are only going to want one of each item. And then we need to say what we're going to retain, and we can do a little snippet of those items by putting it in, put in some asterisks here. And we can say, for example, iron. And then we can also do a comma, and we can add another one into here. And we can say gold, like so. And so what we should have is output retain 1 iron and gold to orb. This should do exactly what we want it to do. So to be able to test this out, this is where we're going to utilize our label gun, and we shift right click to pull all of the labels that we created. And we just need to click and label this to barrel 1, label, and just basically tell SFM what these labels mean. And so here is the orb. And then when we're done, we just simply right click, and that will push all of the labels into our system. So now if I put iron in here and gold, what we should see is hopefully that iron and gold goes in here correctly. But I did notice that this is not doing exactly what we want. And I wonder if I can fix this. Now, some ways around this, we can actually manage this a little bit differently. Let's go ahead and we'll split up the gold and we'll split up the iron, and we'll make this 2 separate lines. So we'll copy this because it looked like the iron was functioning. And we'll make sure this output here goes iron and then gold. Now, another thing that we want to keep in mind is we want this to technically not pull the products out and send it all into this barrel, which it was definitely doing before. So now that we've done this, the changes update automatically. And you can see we only have 2 in here, and then our output has then been placed in. But notice this is also instantly pulling and sending all of the things out of this barrel and sending it to this barrel. And why is this doing this? Well, that's because of the way that inputs work. Every time that this runs, it is going, hey, take the items from this barrel and the orb, and then it is telling it, hey, send it here. So what's happening is it still remembers all of the items and locations of the items inside of these inventories. And so when it gets this output to barrel 2, it's just going to send those there. A way that we can get around this is by changing up our code here and using forget. So let's go ahead and move things around. We have our input currently set up here to input from the orb. We really don't want to do that until the very end, right before we output to barrel. So we can specify right here, input from, and then we have input from barrel. This is going to then send to the orb, and then we have an input from orb and send to the barrel. But if we don't put a forget in here, it is still going to take items from the barrel. So after this line, we can say forget, which is pretty good. And we can do something like this. So now it is forgetting these inputs in this operation after it has happened, and now gives us a fresh input of just orb. And you can even specify after this the specific variable or label that you want to remove from its memory. But as of right now, if I click this, it should now hold all of these items in to this barrel and not move them over. And as you can see, it's just simply pulling the items out and sending the complete over here every 20 ticks. And I know this may seem like a lot, but this mod is insanely powerful. And this barely touches the surface. But as soon as you understand that you can do limits like this, it opens a whole lot of options that we're going to be utilizing later on when we automate candies and automate that darn Cobblemon pot. Now, if you are looking for other mods that can also do this quote unquote regulating or limiting, you can use modular routers. Modular routers can have upgrades inside of their senders and pullers. You just need to put a regulator augment in here, and you can set the value of a filtered item, which is really, really nice. So you can limit how many items you want going in. Another powerful tool is by utilizing Laser IO, and Laser IO has a counting filter. This also does that same thing. You can set how many of particularly filtered items you want to be either pulled out or kept into a container or sent into another container. And AE2 even has a way of regulating. It's just not super easy, but we'll get into it later on. Now, this whole setup is not intended to be permanent. This is actually intended to work for right now so we can build up a few before we get into AE, because AE makes automating this incredibly easy and incredibly fast. But for now, this is a great sort of learning experience, and I love playing around with SFM. This mod is fantastic. Now, with the hardened stuff, we are able to upgrade to some hardened capacitors. And with me upgrading these to the hardened versions, they can now support 2000 FE per tick. And this cable, well, it's not going to be able to handle that capacity. So we can go ahead and upgrade for right now, slap these over, and this now stores and holds quite a bit more power. Now for the fun part, we need to limit a specific item because our next goal is to make blazing crystals, which we are going to need quite a lot of. And this is why I went after those blaze rods. What I want to do is I just want to say, hey, only put one blaze rod in at a time. Just like the other ones, if we put multiple in, it's going to break the whole system. So we need to maintain only one. And that should be really easy to just simply take our existing code and modify it. The way that we can quickly and easily do this is just by modifying one thing. We'll go ahead and we will copy this line, and then I'm going to put this directly underneath. Go ahead and just nudge it over. This isn't very specific, but I do like to keep it nice and clean. And then we can do something called commenting out. So 2 dashes inside of here is going to comment out these lines, meaning these are no longer going to function and are just going to act as a comment, which you could typically put in here and be able to label your code and say, this is what this does for somebody who's reading it. In our case, we're just going to use it to temporarily disable this section. And now when we go back in, I can just simply modify this line. And instead of saying gold, we can say rod. We don't have to say blaze rod. We could say blaze if we want, but I'm just going to say rod. And that's because rod is in the name of this item. And I mean, this is how easy this is. Whenever I put this in now, notice it only holds one blaze rod in and then sends our blazing catalyst out. But now let's say I want to utilize blaze rod blocks to make this in bulk. You can also do that. So notice this still has rod in the name. And so when I put this in, it's still going to put one rod block in here. And with this, we're now making blocks of blazing crystal. With all of this blaze being produced, it now leads me into making the things that are going to generate some power, because I'm already starting to run into a power hiccup. So thermal generators are one of the best options, and we get to do a little bit of exploring to actually upgrade these things to the maximum. At first glance, it doesn't seem like they generate all that much power, like 300 FE per tick. That's not a whole lot of power, really. But these can be upgraded, and this number right here, if you basically remove a 0, is the percentage power increase that we're actually going to receive. So this is a 280% boost on that initial power number. And so these will produce quite a lot of power, and the only thing they need is the block underneath, and also to be piped water into them. Oh, and did you catch that? Yes, there is a way to increase this by 900%, which is absolutely ridiculous. So if we take a look at our heat source blocks, Soul Lava from All The Mons is something that we can use. And getting a hold of it isn't super difficult if you have flight. For now, though, I am going to set them up on top of blazing blocks, and you can see nothing is going to happen. No power is being generated, and that's because we need to give this some water. And so something like a sink works really, really well for this. We can place down a sink just like so, and then use any sort of piping mod. So like from the pipes, we can use fluid pipes, and then grab our wrench, place this onto the side, and just use it to simply pull some water out. And when we do this, this is going to just start generating power. And right here, it says with this underneath, it is producing 420 FE per tick from just a single block that is of the blazing tier. Now, the real power comes with being able to scale these up pretty quick and pretty easy. So I can place them all in, like so. I've even added my cable up on the top, and we just simply scale this. So we just need to run water to them. Now, in just this short time period, just by using the blaze blocks underneath, we're producing about 3,360 RF per tick, give or take, which is great. But this still goes even higher. These are just the blazing tiers as of right now. We can go all the way up into spirited tier, which produces 750 FE per tick as its base. And then of course you do the 250 or 200 and whatever percent is on the increase on these, the 280, and that starts to get a lot higher. Next step is just diamond, just like we did before. I'm just going to say retain 1 diamond, and all of these for the rest of them are going to be keeping the exact same thing. What I do need to start doing though is probably upgrading the rods. You know what? While this is doing its thing, maybe we should take a dip into the other and see if we can't get some of that very special lava. To find this soul lava, back into the nether I go. I'm going to place down the teleport pad from All The Mons. And whenever we shift right click this with an empty hand, well, this should teleport us to a new dimension, and this dimension is called the other. So this dimension, pretty spooky, pretty scary, but with flight, it shouldn't be too hard to maneuver around. And we are looking for some massive chasms and openings inside of the world. Now, there is a lot of spooky things that we could potentially find here and a lot of structures, but I'm more interested in the things underground at the moment. Aha, a spot like this is just the place. And I definitely want to grab some of these because by eating these, it does grant us some night vision. And this also feeds us quite well. Look at that saturation. Now, dipping down into these caves, this is where we will most likely find the soul lava that we're looking for. Well, potentially find it. There is a chance. This is also another place where you can find vibranium ore and several other things. Ooh, man, this is a massive cave. And I managed to find a massive regular lava lake. Not exactly what I'm looking for, though. I think I found it. Yes, ancient basalt deltas is the biome that you need to look for in order to find soul lava. Oh, and boy, did I find a lot of it. Oh my goodness. I mean, technically I only need a little bit as of right now. I mean, maybe in the future we'll need more, but oh my goodness. I just got back with my soul lava and look who I found. There's an Eevee that's just sitting out here. Oh man, I don't want to like, I mean, that's the problem. I know a lot of you guys are like, Chosen, just make like fast balls. Unfortunately, fast balls aren't super easy for me to make at the moment. But I will make them in the future. And I have seen a lot of comments just actually like hit them with false swipe. I don't have false swipe just yet, nor do I have a mon that is really false swipeable. So that's why I've been throwing balls, because I don't want to knock out the mons that I'm actively going for. So for example, right now, I really just want to get lucky and potentially catch it. And I have tried doing battles outside, but oh, there we go. But sometimes they will aggro at you, and then you still have to engage in battle to be able to go after them. So for right now, I'm catching them the old-fashioned way, where I just bombard them with balls. That sounded way worse than it should have, but yes. And there we go. I got it anyways. Now that I'm back, I've added some acacia trapdoors because I'm going to have a little bit of sort of orange and a black theme in here, I think. So as of right now, we're producing 420 on thermal, just regular blazing gens. If I break all of these and we then replace it with soul lava underneath, this is now producing 1,350 each, which is a lot more. And also with another line of cold change, basically just set this to emerald. We are now also producing spirit. So technically I can go ahead and upgrade these things. Now I would be careful with this material. I don't know if machines kind of disappear like they do with lava. So yeah, I did bucket it back up before going to exchange all of these. And I think this mod is going to fit really well into our setup. So I got these upgraded to spirited tier. And these things should produce quite a lot of power. I mean a lot of power here. So we'll put this down 6,750 each on the tier before the one that requires nether stars. This is going to last us a good while, I think. So now with all of these upgraded, we are producing a nice 54,000 RF per tick, with really minimal effort required to get into it. And that is going to be more than enough to carry us through the age of AE2. There's Powah, and automated with Super Factory Manager. Something cool though about Super Factory Manager, if we ever need this again, all of our information is just simply stored on this Powah card, or inside of this disk that is labeled Powah. And we can put this inside of our storage or what have you, or keep it inside of our inventory, whatever we need. And anytime we need to bring it back, we can place it in here, and we just basically pull the labels off and define what those variables or those labels are, and it's ready to go. Also, I can share this with you. So if you want this specific SFM code, I will actually have it over in the general channel on my Discord. You can find that link down in the description below, and where you'll also find multiple other snippets of information and other SFM code that I have also posted over there. So be sure to check that out. You can find that in the pins up in the top right. And because of all that power that we're producing, why shall we even have a limit? Let's go ahead and bypass that limit, giving us 20,000 to be able to fill this up. And now this thing is really going to start kicking off, and our quarry is going to work even faster. And I tell you, what a relief it is to have power under our belt. All of this is going to make the next few steps so much easier to get into, and I can't wait for this base to really start to come together and this to become an actual laboratory. I mean, it's already getting there. We have our power stations over here in the corner bits. We'll probably scale those up as needed. There's so many options. Some rooms for expansion. I'm using factory blocks for the floor here. Just so much potential, so little time to get all of it done. But guys, speaking of time, we are all out of it, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I hope you learned something new, especially about Super Factory Manager, as it is such a powerful mod. If you did, be sure to click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and give this video, guys, a huge thumbs up. And with that, it's now time for me to thank the amazing supporter of today's episode. And that amazing thanks is going to go out to Khaleesi Hajo. I think I said that right. Thank you so much for your amazing support and choosing to support me over on the Discord by becoming a Discord premium member and supporting my content in one of the best ways possible. And guys, I hope you enjoyed. I look forward to seeing you all in the next episode. And as always, thanks for watching.